So we've gone through a couple of different steps inside of Flame Premium, and we've come to the section where we're going to show some real-time color grading. Um, I think we started out talking about something for everyone, and this really kind of closes everything together because we started with our timeline workflow, that we've been focusing on the great creative tools in Flame, and now we want to move to the advantages of real-time color grading. So let's take a look at how that works, and I think this brings us back to our convergence story. And I won't go through the whole graphic again, but remember what we're seeing is that there are a lot of great Flame artists, smoke artists, Lustre artists, people that are doing great work in finishing, and clients are really moving towards this idea of bringing all of these activities into one location. So if they can do all of this in one suite, it's going to save them time, it's going to save them money, and it's going to let them work with the trusted artists that they're already working with. So that's a really interesting take on the convergence story. And again, Bill was showing the simplicity of this workflow, the idea that using one project, one set of data, one artist driving the project can really change the way you do finishing. And I think it's worth looking at kind of what a traditional finishing workflow is, which is where you're starting essentially at the acquisition side and moving all the way through delivery. Now, this process works great, and it can be extremely efficient if you have every step go perfectly. But one of the things that's kind of interesting is if you look at the amount of color data that's available throughout the process. And I know it looks a bit like a rainbow. There's no unicorn to jump over the rainbow here, but what I want you to think about is, at the beginning you have all this color data, but by the time you get into your 3D VFX and compositing or a post grade, you've really lost access to a lot of that color. Sure. So what happens if while you're in 3D VFX and compositing you want to make a change that involves an adjustment to the color, whether it's total look development changing or just grading to a single shot? Well, a change at this point really causes problems because it's going to cost money. You're going to have to stop down the session. You might have to throw away some of the work that you've been doing. So that's one really interesting way to look at how bringing those color grading and look development tools into the finishing suite can actually help change the workflow, because you now have all of that in one room and you have access to that color data essentially from the time you get into the suite to the time the job heads out for delivery. And that's really what Bill's going to show in this next section. So when we want you to think about Flame Premium, it really is that idea of 3D visual effects, and it's the powerful 3D visual effects tools of Flame that you all know and depend on, plus real-time color grading. And I think that's really what changes the equation here. So with that, I'm going to hand it over to Bill, who's going to take us through the real-time color grading aspect of Flame Premium, and then he's going to show us how that all ties back into the whole VFX workflow. All right, Bill, so you've taken us through the visual effects aspect of Flame Premium, whether it's working on the timeline workflow or the desktop workflow, and we've looked at some of the more complicated visual effects that can be done, and now it's time to talk about real-time color grading.
That's right, Mark. So we're going to go ahead and launch into Flame Premium's real-time color grading.
And this is the same project that you were actually using before. So again, you create one project regardless of whether you're doing visual effects or color grading.
That's right, and we're also using our same user across the applications.
Now, working between visual effects and color grading can be a bit of a nightmare if you're using multiple softwares from different manufacturers. And this is one of the problems that we really tried to address with Flame Premium. So what's the process for moving the data from your project into the color grading area?
Well, it's as simple as just browsing through Wiretap over the network to take a look at those same libraries, the exact same structure that we were looking at before. And inside of here, you can see on the Flame side, I'm looking into the For Lustre library, where I can just pick up this one proxy, but it actually represents that entire completed timeline.
Now, we're using Lustre for the real-time color grading aspect of this, and you named your library for Lustre, but you could grab it from anywhere in your frame store, right?
Yeah, and it could be even an individual shot. It doesn't necessarily need to be a timeline, but we thought with that complex timeline, you would get the point of how quickly you can actually just transfer or actually point to that same media over the network and then kind of recreate that same timeline here for real-time color grading.
So you didn't actually duplicate the data, it's just pointing to it on the same drives that we were looking at it in Flame earlier.
Exactly, and if we look at the timeline itself, you can see that I can navigate down to the exact same shots that we were looking at before in Flame. So you've got the catapult shot here where we had done the cleanup and the replacement. If we move down a little bit further, we have the 3D visual effects finishing shot with our OpenEXR CG, with also the substance texture cloud background. And then finally, we've got our waterfall shot moving into our package shot of the Guinness, which again was a projection onto a cylinder.
So this is a great example of how the timeline has really become your mechanism of moving back and forth between the different parts of your finishing project.
That's right.
Now, one of the concepts that I know is important in Flame Premium is that we've tried to keep familiar UI aspects where possible. So you saw the timeline looks the same.
That's right. And another nice thing about this UI, just before we start looking at the color grading tools, is just the layout. And I think it's really nice because everything is specifically designed to focus on color. So for example, in terms of the timeline, it's represented actually 3 different ways. You can see I can click on any of these little thumbnails and quickly navigate to the different parts of my timeline that way. So just by just clicking visually on any of the shots, I can quickly move to them. Below each of these thumbnails, you see we have an isolation of the individual shot itself. I can scrub through that for more detail. And then below that, we've got the alternating checkerboard of the lighter and darker segments representing the entire timeline. So it's this quick to navigate from the first shot all the way through to the final shot in this piece. So that combination of tools allows us very fast navigation. We also have our grade bin over here for the project scene or user level. This allows us to quickly save setups and looks that we can apply to other shots. And then, of course, we have our pipeline with our input primaries, our output primaries, and then 48 secondaries that we can work inside and outside. And as you mentioned before, something that I like quite a lot is the ability to work with tools that are quite familiar. So if we look at a shot like this, if we move down to the curves, and under the hue curves we have a saturation curves, this looks quite familiar. If we plot on screen the green color of the grass here, you can see we can actually start to enhance that saturation by removing or adding more saturation, and even specifically as a green shade of green back here, we could add a point and enhance that or remove that color as well. So tools that you're familiar with, will translate, your knowledge will translate well into this real-time color grading.
Now we keep saying real time, and can you show us a little of what that means? I think it's kind of a neat example the way you've kind of set this one up.
Yeah, in fact, let's just for effect now. I don't think many colorists would work this way. And by the way, the mill didn't use Flame Premium on this particular project. I just wanted to mention that. I'm taking a little poetic license to show you how a flame artist might use these tools, this extended set of tools specifically for color grading to actually do a lot of cool techniques, apply a lot of cool looks to these images. So we're going to take you through that. So I've just sort of looped this first shot here. I want to start working on this, and on the input primary level, I'm just going to add some color in. So again, very familiar looking tool. I'm just going to add a little bit of a warmer tone, more in the theme of our Guinness look. We're going to actually enhance that a bit by adding a little bit more yellow, brown into that. And again, I can bypass that to show you the before and after. We can also work with our lift, our gamma. I'll exaggerate that so you can really see what's going on, maybe add a little bit more contrast to the shot as well. So again, we're just taking it from this kind of cool look into a much warmer look. But then on the secondary level, again, up to 48 secondaries available. I'm going to just enable the first one and go to our secondary palette here, our menu, where we can actually start to add shapes. So there's an entire shape system, again, familiar to people who use Flame and Smoke. If we look at the matte that we're generating there, we can actually soften those masks as well. We can soften inside or outside. So let's soften this a bit inside, blur it out quite a bit as well, maybe kind of expand that out a bit. And then within this mask, what I'm going to do is start to generate a key. So again, keying, a very familiar concept to Flame and Smoke artists. So go back to our key. We're going to use a luminance key and just sample the sky up here. So that's going to start to isolate that. We can blur this mask quite a bit. This is another thing that's nice about color grading, is you get the ability to work with a much looser sort of mask system. You don't have to worry as much about being as precise on that. And then what we'll do is go back to our to our tools and just add in some blue into that area, right? So we're going to just add a little bit more blue inside of that mask, and then maybe also come back and invert that mask and just sort of move it down. I'm just going to create almost like a little bit of a glow on the horizon, right? So we want a blue sky, but then sort of a nice glow on the horizon. Now for the next secondary, I'm going to enable that. And I want to go back to the first frame because I want to show you how I can use another shape. We're going to just grab a circle here, and we're going to actually follow this main character. And you can see he's moving quite a bit in this scene. So what I'm going to use is the really powerful shape tracker. And when I just enable the shape tracker and apply that shape tracker to that circle, you can see how quickly, and if we look at the mat itself, how quickly that mask has been tracked to that character. So it's really an amazing tool for doing isolations in different parts of your image. Now within that section, we can also apply something like a diamond keyer. We can add a diamond keyer to that. Again, we're going to blur that out. We'll add more tolerance in there, maybe soften this mask out a bit more. And what I want to do is combine what we're doing on this level with this level. And we can do that using sort of like a logic op, if you will. We can come in and we can actually move this down. You can see that I can create a logic op, which will allow me to maybe create like a glow around the outside of that character. So again, we can just sort of brighten that up, and we'll hit play again, and you can see that now we're able to do all of this in real time. And again, I can go back, I can play around with the position of my masks and start to interact with them even as things are playing back.
And this is a great example of something that's just not possible in compositing, because you would have had to set up multiple masks, multiple color warpers, render that out every time you made a change. So this is really kind of the real-time aspect of being able to really quickly create a look for a scene or for a particular element.
Yeah, and apply the same techniques that you know in compositing to grading. And if I wanted to, I could just sort of turn on and off these secondaries and sort of show you the before and after of each of these. So it's a pretty cool system for basically taking care of these kind of balancing and effects very quickly. If I just sort of reset back, I can also go to my grade bin now. I can save what we've been working on so far. And also talk a little bit about effects. So I'm going to move to this shot. Again, we'll loop that down and move to the effects menu. And here we have a whole choice, a selection of different effects. I'm going to use the print bleach bypass effect. And if I start to mix that in with the original, we can blur that out. We can brighten this up. You can see that even applying heavier effects doesn't really compromise the performance here. So we're able to do this kind of real-time effects work as well. So again, if I bypass back, we were here, and then the effects were just a quick print bleach bypass effect, and we can get that kind of look. All right, so let's reset that as well and go back to this shot, because really a lot of what you're doing in color, if we look at the shots around this, you can see that they don't have the same look at all that we've created. So what we want to do is basically apply this look to the other shots, right? So what I've done is I've saved that into my grade bin, and now I can go sort of shot by shot on this sequence and just copy and paste that grade to any of these other shots. So it's just as easy as just double clicking on that shot from the grade bin. And now when we go all the way back to our first shot in the sequence and play through, we're going to see a lot more consistency across all of those different shots in this grass sequence. If I see anything that kind of stands out, for example, this shot, it looks a little bit too saturated as it relates to this shot, I can always use the dual view here to do a comparison. So I can load up different shots into a side-by-side view to then go back in and start to make adjustments. Maybe I need a little bit less saturation here. And you can see now we're going to have something that works a bit better as we move across these different cut angles of our main character. So that's a pretty nice way of working to do the continuity grading. All right, so another thing I want to talk about is just painting, basically painting a shot. Doing something that's a little bit more creative on something that really doesn't have a lot of a look at first that you see here. And I can do that using, again, the secondaries, but a really elegant choice would be to work inside and outside of a secondary. So if I just split this scene using, again, just a basic shape, just a line tool, what I'm going to do here is soften that out. and also start to grade inside of it, right? So I've got the inside outside possibilities here. So I'm going to start to put some color into that. We'll actually invert that. Put a little bit of color, maybe a little bit more saturation, and again, we can do all this while playing it back in real time. You can see I can sort of place that line anywhere that I want. But even within that same single secondary, I can work on the outside as well, and maybe on the outside remove all the saturation from that shot and maybe move it away from the blue. So again, you can see that just within that one secondary, I was able to, if we bypass back, just kind of paint that scene. Now if we go to the next shot, again, this whole sequence of the underwater sequence, we want to have the same look. Now instead of using the grade bin, that wasn't as efficient as just gesturally copying and pasting a grade from one shot to the other. We could also do that for a whole sequence of shots. If I highlight all of these shots, again, with a hotkey, I can just drag and drop that across all of those shots. And now if we come back and play through the underwater sequence, you'll see that we were able to apply that sort of blue inside-outside look across that whole sequence. So again, you can get the idea of just how efficient it is to move through all of these shots when you have this kind of copy and paste, different ways of copying and pasting shots across. Let's go back and reload our timeline. We're just going to put that back to kind of a neutral timeline now, because another thing we might want to do if we go back to the green shot that we were working on originally. Let's load back the grade. So we could also just select everything in our timeline, and then just based on the selection that we have, copy and paste either effects or grades or repositions all the way across all of our shots. So now when we look through the timeline, everything has got that as a base grade. So you could just sort of maybe start with your basic balancing of your shots, and then go in and start to work on any of the specific colors that you want to affect. Alright, so we've applied the grade to this shot, and this was the waterfall shot that we had worked on in Flame doing the compositing. And it's a little bit too saturated, so I'm just going to back the grade off a little bit, maybe bring the saturation back down somewhat. You can see if I bypass, there's a little more subtle grade on that now. And now what I want to start to do is create a little bit more depth in this shot. I want to do a little more separation based on the distance of the objects in our scene. And to do that, I'm going to start to isolate the foreground and the background. But rather than do that again, recreate these shapes on the grading side, I know that they exist already. And so if I browse back to Flame, I can see that shot.
So I think this is one of the real powerful features, or one of the most powerful features of Flame Premium, which is the ability to take the compositing and matting ability that you have in Flame and then be able to reuse those mats here. So in this case, you exported those mats very specifically because you knew you wanted to use those in grading.
That's right, and you can see if I open the mat folder here that we exported to a specific location where I can see the RGBA channels, and that's how we're going to bring those mats over. So if I just pick this shot up now and just drag it into the Lustre shot bin, I can actually use a hotkey to replace that ungraded material from Flame under the grade that we've created over here. So I'm just going to drop that in, and now when we come over to our secondaries and activate the secondaries and look at the RGBA channels, you can see that we actually have the ability to repurpose those now in the grading side.
So this is great. So this is really merging those two worlds of finishing, VFX finishing and color grading. Now, how can you use these mats? Can you combine them with what's already there?
Yeah, well, you can actually start to use the shape systems on top. So you can see if I just want the top portion of that mat, I can just isolate that, and then I could go in and add another one here. Maybe I want to soften that out a little bit more on the bottom part. And then what that's going to allow me to do is to start using my grading tools in conjunction with those mats. So you can see here I can start to apply some gain. Maybe I only want the gain to be in the foreground. So what we'll do is go back to our mats, and then for the individual shapes, we can start to adjust the density of those shapes through the color. So you can see here I can start to bring the color down just in that one area. And again, if we go back to our gain levels, you can see now we're affecting just the foreground much more than we are the background. So with this method, you can really start to plan the exporting of your mats from Flame to then repurpose here in the grading side. And again, the other types of things that we can do, if we look back at the editorial timeline, we're going to move a little bit further down into to that section where we had the the package shot coming in. There's also some things that if we wanted to make some editorial adjustments, we could do that here as well. So for example, we could enable our trim tool. We could do something like trim out the dissolve, or even adjust the head frames on the package shot. Very, very simple editorial changes, but again, not always necessary to re-enter flame or smoke to do something basic like that.
Yes, this is great. And again, that timeline really becoming that mechanism, I think reinforcing that theme.
Exactly. So with that, let's move on to some more of the advantages, I think, of working over here in our real-time color grading system. So first thing I want to talk about is another mode that I like a lot, which will allow me to let's clear the timeline out. Which will allow me to quickly go in and start to look at my entire timeline in a storyboard mode. So you can see that I can look at everything out, and what you get is certain patterns that develop. So you can see here's our grass sequence, there's the underwater sequence, here's the catapult sequence. And what I'm going to do is get into using some groups. So what we'll do is create a new group, and we're going to define that group by grade. And let's say we'll go in and select just the grass scene. Right, so then we'll go in and let's make another group. This one we're going to define. Let's clear out the other one. Define by grade, and then this one we're going to use the catapult scene. Right, so we'll get into kind of creating different groups this way. Now, if we look at the first section and the second section, you can see I can divide up the entire timeline into different groups.
Bill, you could actually sort the timeline in different ways as well. Like you're sorting kind of because they happen to kind of fall into this pattern, but you could do an A mode, a C mode. It's a good way to find patterns throughout your edit as you create these groups.
Absolutely, that's another quick way of being able to view your timeline in different ways. So with these selections that we've made, the next thing I want to do is I want to start to bring up another view, which is the multi-view, right? So this will allow me to actually lay out those particular shots. Let's take away the thumbnails for a second. Into those groups side by side, and this is again a really big benefit when you're doing your grading. You might want to be able to come in and start to apply like an overall output trim pass, right? So I can start to maybe add some gain, or maybe I want to bring this all a little bit more toward one color or another. We can also play back within any of these little windows. If there's a shot that stands out from the others, this one that looks like it could use a bit more contrast, we can go into a solo mode for that, apply the contrast to just that one shot, and then re-gang everything together to make some more further adjustments. If we go back to our other gang, maybe we want to put that into a multi-view as well, and we'll just update to see those shots. And again, we have the same capabilities here, where we can go back and start to apply maybe a different look to all those shots. But again, side by side, it allows me to really compare and create that continuity for the different sequences that we're working with. And then finally, if we bring back the thumbnails, I think this is also interesting. We can also collapse the entire timeline down. Let's get out of our multi-view and back to a single view now. Come back to the beginning here, and I'm just going to quickly refresh my timeline and then play back that entire group sequence together. So this again allows us to just isolate one section of our timeline, just focus on that, and put everything aside so that we can really do our work one sequence at a time. So I think that's also quite useful. And then when we uncollapse our timeline, if we go back to the queue mode, everything goes back into the correct order, which is great. Alright, for this last part, I thought it would be fun to actually take sort of the flame eye perspective on these shots, and actually take advantage of these tools and take them in a completely different direction. So I'm going to isolate just a few shots that we have in the timeline. I'm going to collapse those down just so I can focus on these three shots in this sequence. And for these shots, I'll start with this one, and I'm going to create almost like a silhouette, kind of a glow look on this shot. So let's start by applying a bit of a grade. We're just going to move into our gold theme. We'll apply that kind of gold look, and then on the secondary level, we're going to go in and we're going to again do some keying. So we're going to start isolating the sky. And if we look at the matte, as we start to add to our gain here, we can really start to create a nice isolation there. So we'll also invert that a bit. And again, remember these masks can be really forgiving, so that's what's great about it. So let's add a little bit more up in that area. And now when we come back, we'll just go to our gain, and we're going to start to bring the gain down. So almost using the tool as like a digital darkroom here. We're going to start to play that back, and again, if I turn that on or off, you can see exactly what I'm doing. I'm just bringing more of a silhouette feel to it. Now, I still have some issue with our matte over here, so I'm actually just going to fix that with a simple trick. I'll just go and add another secondary, and we'll just use a circle over here to kind of use that as inspiration for almost like a sun. So I'm going to go back and start to add some gain in that area to create almost like a sort of a sunny sort of look in that part of the image, right? So we can soften that out and create a bit of a sun kind of look. And again, if we come here, if I sort of bypass back to where we were, you can see how we can really use our visual effects background to start to create looks that are kind of interesting like that. Now, based on this look, I'm going to take the other two shots, and we're just going to copy that across to the other two shots. Again, we can just kind of copy and paste across to our other shots. And again, this needs to be a little bit more isolated on the individual characters. So we'll go to another secondary, and again, we can enable our shape system, our shape tracker, and we're going to put a shape on this guy. And again, we can start to analyze his movement. And of course, we'll do one up here on the same secondary for this guy. He's kind of gone a little bit too dark. So again, just sort of reminding you of the power of this shape system. We'll soften these two shapes way out, and then and also blur within them a bit, so we can kind of soften that out. And then we'll go back and start to add a little bit more gain. So again, you can see that we're able to really kind of enhance that area of the screen, right? So again, it's really simple to do. Maybe go back to our secondaries and blur these out even further, so that we can really get sort of soft looks there. And then in this area, it's a similar thing, but basically working from the last frame, I'll turn on another secondary and kind of shape track backwards here, and again, just soften that out, blur it out, add some more gain, and again, we're going to kind of create this sort of look across all three of those shots. So you can see how easy it was to do that. And again, when I uncollapse my timeline back, you can see that I've now put those back into the standard order for our timeline. So now it's time to render. Let's say I want to render this back. Now this is the point that we can go under our rendering settings. We can set up whether we want to render just an individual shot or the overall shot. If we go to our settings, you can see I'm working on that same project, so I can even navigate to where I want to put that directly back in the From Lustre library.
And again, that could be any library, but just really underscoring the simplicity of what we've tried to do with this solution. So you're not wasting time rendering to an intermediate or another location, then trying to find all those pieces and bring them back into the VFX room if you're grading either before or in the middle of a job.
Yeah, it's easy to round trip back into any location, but this sort of keeps it straight in my head. That's my Dropbox back from my color grading, and that will allow me to render to a specific location that I know where to pick up.
Now we're not going to actually show the render because we don't want to sit through the time to render it, but Bill, you're going to launch back into Flame, into the Flame desktop workflow, and show us quickly how that material would come back in.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay, Bill, so you've finished your real-time color grading, you've rendered your material, and now we're going back into VFX to see how this data round trips back into the VFX world.
Yeah, exactly. And so to illustrate that, I thought I'd go into the From Lustre library. That's where we had rendered again through Wiretap back into the Flame library. So here are all the individual rendered elements, and you can see if I go into that shot that we were just working on, you can see that we can look at that grade that I'd applied. So it's now been rendered back over to the Flame library.
So this was all automatic. It happened right from Lustre. You just had to hit render, and the clips were there waiting for you in Flame.
That's right, and you can see we've got our sun effect, our silhouette effect, our sort of digital darkroom look.
Now, people might be surprised to learn that that's actually not the final version of that shot of the guy.
That's right. I also thought I'd make an alternate version. If we look into my edited library, I'm going to look at the one that I did a little bit earlier that I thought was again having a little fun with it.
Now, normally, normally this would be wrong for several reasons, but actually one of the problems is that this would traditionally break your workflow because you've just gone and done your color grading session, and now you've got a different VFX shot that needs to have that same look and feel applied to it.
That's right. So of course on the Flame side, I was working with the ungraded material. In fact, I've got a pre-batch effect. If we go back inside, you'll see that it was actually a distort node that I was working with. You can see I've got my shot, I've got my distort spline that I've tracked onto this character. You can see I can still interact with this, and start making some changes to this if I wanted to. But the really important thing here is that we've got our ungraded material. So how do we get our ungraded material linked up with those renders that we had done in the real-time grading? So to do that, we're going to step back out, and all we need to do, and it's quite simple, is basically send this entire timeline with our ungraded shots, but all of our finished VFX work, into the location where our renders are from our grading. So that was in the From Lustre library. So I'm just going to send that clip now into that location. And then we'll go into that library and look down here at the bottom. Now we've brought that timeline. So that timeline needs to be associated with the rendered elements. So to do that, we'll start by unlinking using the tools, the unlink relink tool, to unlink everything from the original media, from the effects, and then we're going to say let's go over and relink from the entire library the graded material.
So now it's rebuilt the timeline using the material that was rendered back from Lustre. And
there you are. So we've got our grade now applied, and our effect reapplied on top. And you can see all I need to do now, if I wanted to make some more adjustments, was step back inside the pre-batch effect, and you can see our ungraded material has been replaced with the graded material, and then of course the effect applied on top.
So I think this is a great example of how, again, we're not really suggesting this is a workflow, this exact order that you might use. What I think the key here is, again, flexibility. The ability to access real-time color grading tools at just about any step in the finishing process changes the way people are going to be finishing content, and that's really what we mean with the idea of taking control of finishing with Flame Premium. So thanks, Bill, for taking us through these examples. If you want more information on Flame Premium, don't forget you can go to autodesk.com/Flame Premium. There's plenty of information there, and we can't wait to see all the great stuff that you guys do with Flame Premium.
Absolutely, and thanks a lot, Mark. It's been a lot of fun.
Oh, it's been like getting the old band back together, Bill.
Exactly.